Bournemouth, they're still being managed by Andoni Iraola, although he will be leaving at the end of the season. It's kind of been a bit up and down. So during the season, they've had spells where they were unbeaten for 14 games. However, they also had a spell where they didn't win for 11. Their recent form is, they're unbeaten again, but it's a lot of draws. There's 4 wins in, is that 4 wins in 10, but 6 draws?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So they've got 4 wins out of those 10 games. The wins came against Wolves, Everton, Arsenal and Newcastle. And then in the draws, it was Villa, West Ham, Sunderland, Brentford, Burnley, Man United. They're a very chaotic side, Bournemouth, and I think that's played out in the results. Have had really good spells where they've done well, and that 14-game streak is the one that they're currently on. So they're currently in a 14-game unbeaten streak at the moment.
Yes.
But they, like I said there, they also had a period where they didn't win for 11 games. So, yeah, they have been very up and down this season, but they're still in a good position. But that middle of the table realm is anyone's for the taking. No one can decide and take advantage of the chaos.
The fact that we can potentially finish above Newcastle now, depending on how they finish the season as well, is a bit wild. I guess for them, you'd say that the result against Newcastle probably means that the Iraola news hasn't really affected them, which, it could do. Obviously, Palace have recovered from that period where Glasner said he's leaving at the end of the season, and they had that instant drop in form, and everyone was like, Glasner has to go now. That's obviously died away. That hasn't happened for Bournemouth, or it doesn't look like it has. We'll see. Maybe we get that reaction on Wednesday. But yeah, it's just very middle in form, isn't it? Very middle of the table.
Yes.
Very not relegation. Not going to get. Probably not going to get Europe. I think they've still got a chance of getting 8th if it's one of the top 4. If it's Chelsea or Man City that win the FA Cup, I think 8th will get them Conference League. Unless we win it. That'll be the day for me. I guess the big question now is, how do they play in possession?
So the 4-2-3-1 side, and that's pretty much Andoni Iraola's bread and butter. That's what he's always gone with. They play with quite a lot of narrowness in their play. They like to get a lot of triangles going and lots of deep build-up patterns going. But I think Iraola's biggest strength is always coming from his out-of-possession stuff, but we'll speak about that soon. They do like to hit a lot of crosses into the box, pretty high in the stats for getting crosses into the box, and their fullbacks will push high, especially Adrien Truffert on the left side. He does like to bomb forward quite often, so he will be a big part in a lot of their build-up. He doesn't just stick to wide areas as well. I recently watched, I forget who they were against, but I think it might have been the winning goal against Newcastle, and Truffert had the ball. It was sort of played inside and then played wide, but Truffert ran diagonally inside, and just it was a lovely little move. If you can find it, give it a watch. It's a lovely move, and then it ends up with Truffert scoring the goal from centre of the box. They do rely on a lot of, but they're out of possession stuff. But as I spoke before, we'll get into that soon. But there's a lot of directness in their play. They like to get the ball forward really quickly when they do have it, so they don't really dally too long with the ball. At the back, I would say that one weakness in their side is they don't have a whole lot of height, which should work in our favour, but that is highly dependent on us getting other parts of our game right. But we'll speak about that again a bit later. Yeah,
they're up there with Arsenal for the number of direct attacks this season with 66, according to Opta. Direct speed, so kind of like the speed of which they do get forward, they're 3rd with 1.88. Don't know what that means though. So maybe I shouldn't have said
I've never known that either, but it's highest anyway. One of the highest.
I feel like that's potential meters per second or something like that, and that wouldn't make sense either. But either way, they're third highest for that, or third speediest according to Opta for that one. So yeah, they're very direct. We won't see them, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not going to see them doing intricate moves around the penalty box to break through. It's going to be the kind of build-ups deep to create the space to run into and direct or play the ball into and get forward. You think of the reason why Semenyo was so successful there, because he was doing that. It's kind of like why I couldn't understand why Ouattara left to go to Brentford, but you look at what he's doing at Brentford, that's what he was doing at Bournemouth as well, just coming off the bench. And that's the sort of things that we're talking about with how they're going to attack, really. So out of possession, you've just lauded Iraola for how he sets up out of possession. Why don't you tell us about what it is that is so good?
So I'm not as much of an expert as Iraola as some other people who are associated with this pod are. I'm thinking Tom Wilson and John McKenzie. They're both big Iraola disciples. But I do know that he is a fan of the hybrid press, which is a hybrid man-to-man and zonal marking, which shifts between both quite frequently during games, depending on the phase of play that they're in. I couldn't tell you which phases all those would be. I don't know the intricacies of it, but I do know that it requires a lot of good decision making from their players. They have to be switched on and they have to know what they're meant to be doing in each different pattern, who they should be pressing, what their pressing trigger is, all this kind of stuff. But they are very well coached in it, to say the least. The stats behind that do show it as well. They're up there with the most high recoveries in the league, fourth most for both high recoveries and shot-ending high recoveries. So they know what they're doing, and it's a big part of the way they look to create chaos in games. And I think that is something which, if a game descends into chaos and being end-to-end and quite basketball-y, then they will take advantage of that most of the time, because that is what Iraola wants to happen. I think he is trying to develop a bit of more of an in-possession ideal for when he can't turn things that way, but I don't know too much about that again. I'm sure you can listen to John McKenzie on The Athletic and he will speak about it at length, most likely. But yeah, it's an aggressive press, usually with a front two who are leading the press with the four players behind it, so it's kind of like a 4-2-2-2, that kind of thing. So you end up with quite a narrow press, but very difficult to navigate around, in my opinion. And yeah, it's going to cause us problems, to say the least.
Yeah, he's if people have not listened to the podcast before and aren't aware, Iraola's inspired a little bit with his pressing intensity and what he wants with Bielsa, isn't he? He's a disciple of his from his days in Bilbao. So that's kind of what we expect, is that kind of intensity in man-to-man situation. But he's changed it, as you say, with the hybrid to be a bit more nuanced. I guess it's that plus one that Bielsa had, but he's changed. So it's not the same plus one basically each time, depending on the opponent. Do we think there'll be any changes in that approach, be it going forwards or defensively against us? Has he shown any kind of, have Bournemouth shown any adaptability, flexibility with regards to their opponents, I guess is the question.
I think there probably will be little tweaks depending on the opponents they do, but largely their identity will remain the same, I would say. I don't think we're likely to suddenly see Bournemouth show up in a low block, for example. It's always going to be intense, it's always going to be in your face, and they're always going to look to destabilise their opponents. So I can't imagine there'll be many differences, if any. It'll be the same way. I can't imagine they'd show us any more respect than they would do top end sides. They'll still be just as aggressive against us, and this is away from home, right? I think. Yeah,
we're away. Yeah, we're down at the Vitality.
Yeah. Indeed, which maybe John will be watching this one. He likes getting himself there, I believe.
I mean, fair enough if you can get a ticket for a ground that only has 12,000 people. So how do you think they will line up against us?
So the last two games I've had in the league have been identical, and this is the lineup which they had. Petrovic, Jimenez, Hill, Senesi, Trofer, that's the back line. Then midfield two of Scott and Christie. The three behind the striker, Tavernier, Kroupi and Ryan. And then the striker, Evan Nielsen. The players have got out injured at the moment. Julio Soler, Justin Kluivert and Lewis Cook are all out. And so, barring any further injuries that they've had this weekend, which I'm not aware of, I'd expect that lineup to be quite settled at the moment.
So there's no Tyler Adams in the starting lineup at the moment.
Doesn't seem like it. I think he may have picked up another injury, but although it didn't show that on my usual.
I do seem to remember him picking up an injury earlier on in the year, but I can't remember how bad it was. But
yeah.
Who knows? So who is their biggest threat of those players that are going to be starting then?
For me, Eli Junior Kroupi. He seems to have been in amongst the goals. Absolute wonder kid who I have signed on Football Manager a few times. Before he signed for Bournemouth, he's a bit too expensive now, to be honest. But yeah, he's their biggest threat, at least in terms of goal scoring. But the heartbeat in deeper areas of them is probably Scott. He's probably the most technically gifted out of their midfielders that they've got. Iraola likes to have a lot of what we would fondly call effort boys, players who aren't especially gifted technically, but they have a high level of stamina, they have a high level of off-the-ball work rate. So I'm saying that he would love Brendan Aronson and we should try to get him shifted off to whichever team he moves to next. We'll do your deal, honestly. No, that's mean. That's mean after Aronson did that really lovely cross. But
even Dan James, because he's perfectly fully fit.
Yeah. Well, Bournemouth like a crocked player from us, don't they?
Yeah.
So,
the obvious crocked, like the two crocked players in the squad, sign them for 20 million. Thanks, guys.
Have them both. It's fine. We'll do you a buy one, get one free sale. Anyway, those are the two biggest ones for me who I like the most. Adrian Traffair as well. He has to be keep an eye on. Like I say, he's a big source of their ball progression. He can carry the ball for days, and he's got a lot of pace in his game as well. And most of the rest of the team, from what I've got in front of me here, Tavernier is pretty much an effort boy, can do a lot of things to an average level. Decent ball striking on him, but is inconsistent. Marcus Senesi being highly linked to a move to Spurs if they manage to stay up. He's also highly rated. Another player who's got a decent amount of technicality in the game in deeper areas. But yeah, those are the main ones that I like. I'm not sure if any different that I've left for you there.
No, yeah, Alex Scott's a player that liked from his time at Bristol City as well. Nice to see that he's obviously started to get through because he was injured when he first joined a few years ago. I like Kroupi. We were linked with him last summer, I think, and he's kind of proven his ability at this level now over the past few weeks and months. So that's good for him, obviously, and good for Bournemouth. And I think also there were some questions. I remember when he was linked from some areas. I can't remember who the people were, but there was definitely questions of really him. That's who we're linked to. And I think that, the way that he's progressed is another thing to kind of say we are looking at the people know who they're looking at and they know what they're trying to find with talent. Petrovic is probably the player that is their biggest threat to themselves. The best way I can put it. I think
he's so funny, Petrovic. He can have some games where you look at him and say, "Wow, but how have you made that save?" But then you also, about 5 minutes later, how have you not made that save?
Kind of where we were at one point with Melier. Sometime, and then it unfortunately became too much of the latter. I think if we can we'll get onto it, but if we can get Stack, if he's back, and we can get some pressure and some quality over into Petrovic, then we can maybe get some joy there when we get to that. I just wanted to kind of point that out while it was in the threats and potential weaknesses within the team, but they've got a nice balanced squad and a nice balanced team for how they want to play, haven't they? So we've spoken some stats with regards to their high pressing and their direct attacks, but we'll go a bit more into the other sort of stuff. So Martin, do you want to just take us through maybe that first half, and I'll take the second half? Let's do it that way. Why not?
Yeah,
you can.
Sure
you
thing.
can
That break stops one of us from speaking for too long because there's a lot of stats here. So in terms of the XG, they're 7th in the league, but they have underperformed that and only scored 48 from 51 expected goals. The set piece XG also 5th most, so they actually do create quite a lot from set pieces, which is quite impressive considering they, like I said before, they don't really have that tall of a team. So I'm guessing they must just have some good routines, which they're getting that from. In terms of expected goals against, they also have a high amount, 4th most XG conceded. So, like I said before, chaos is what Andoni Iraola looks to generate, and he certainly has this season. And the set piece XG against, also the 4th most. So at both ends of the box from set pieces, everyone's having chances galore in Bournemouth games. So expect a 0-0 in this one, yeah? Then fast breaks against. So 2nd most fast breaks against, 33 fast break shots and 4 fast break goals. Fast breaks for, 6th most, again high. So just lots of XG from everything.
Very end-to-end sort of games is what we're talking
exactly.
Here.
It just generates a lot of turnovers for both sides, and they've scored the 2nd most goals in the league from fast breaks. So that's, like I said before, one of their biggest strengths. I'll let you take over for the next part.
Yeah, just on the set piece XG, because 5th most surprised me there. I just had a quick look myself. They're also more or less like flatlining with goals to XG. So their XG on that is 13.79 goal XG. The goals that they've scored is 13, which is also the 5th most, which maybe that's also from the fact they've got a few technical players who can score free kicks and stuff like that.
Could be.
But yeah, so we'll go into the next one. So as we mentioned, they've done a lot of good stuff from high recoveries, as we mentioned earlier. So they've got the 4th most for both high recoveries and shot ending turnovers. High recoveries against, which is from a different provider. They're kind of 10th there, so kind of middling within that. Passes per defensive action, they're the 4th most intense. Again, what we expected and what we said earlier. Martin mentioned that they like to pop in crosses. They've done the 5th most crosses, but they're the 2nd worst in the league at cross success. So this is kind of where we've spoken about their height isn't the greatest, which is then kind of shocks you with regards to the set pieces.
Yes.
And then average possession, 10th. Again, I think that's because build up kind of deep and then go attacking. So that kind of like will skew that a little bit. But yeah, so they've been, like we said, a lot of those stuff is high, but then some of that stuff is really middling. That's the sort of team that they are. You know, if you're high for their XG against and you're high for XG, you're going to end up in the middle.
Exactly.
You're not going to end up on either or, unless you're a NEC Nijmegen in the Netherlands, who are currently 3rd, where they've scored and conceded like the 3rd most in the league, both.
There must be stat padding at both ends of the pitch against different opponents.
They've scored and conceded 3 goals in 7 games each separately or something like that. Absolutely wild scenes. But yeah, is there anything else that you wanted to add about Bournemouth, Martin?
I don't think so. Just lastly, just to say that I would have loved it if he could have been the coach to take over from Bielsa. That would have been the stars aligning, because it is a style of play which is quite similar.
It would have transitioned a lot nicer than what the Marsh transition was.
Yeah, it would have. Yes.
Yeah, kind of. I think we've said before that Victor Orta spoke about it was the most like Bielsa due to intensity, which maybe was true because of the intense pressing and high recoveries that we used to do under Bielsa that Marsh wanted to do. No, we're going over old stuff here, guys. Really sorry, but the way of doing it was so different that's why it didn't translate.
Exactly.
But enough about Bournemouth and Andoni Iraola. We shall now move on to discussing Leeds. What are we, Martin, expecting our lineup to look like? Do we expect any different from what we've seen over the past 2 games?
I again think it will be the exact same lineup, barring any injuries that we're not aware of, which I can't imagine there would be, but who knows what could happen between now and Wednesday, but I would expect it to be probably the same lineup. I can't see why they would make any changes, barring potentially Joe Rodon coming back in. And if he was to come back in, I would probably say Yaka Biol will come out. I think Daniel Farker really likes James Justin in the outside centre-back spot. And considering Bournemouth don't have a whole lot of height in their side, it's probably a game where we would be okay to miss out on Yaka. He is our best centre-back in terms of box defending and aerial defending, but probably less requirement for it in this one, and maybe a bit more requirement for someone who is able to navigate around a press. And I think Justin is probably a better choice in that respect because he's pretty two-footed. He's pretty press resistant, pretty strong. So I would say that it'll be the same lineup, barring Yaka coming out for Rodon, if Rodon is fit enough to start, which I would expect he probably would be. We were happy enough to bring him off the bench in the last game, so I would expect that to be the only change. If you got any advance on that?
I think potentially Guev might come in for Tanaka just because this might be a game where he's wanting to avert their press in a certain way and be secure on the ball because they press quite high. Even though I think Tanaka will be fine, I'm just thinking like Daniel Farker might think.
Potentially, yeah.
See that. Whereas against Chelsea, I think Tanaka would also, for thinking ahead, I think therefore if you rest Tanaka as well, because he's looked a bit tight, he got tired obviously against Man United, didn't finish the game on Saturday. You give him only 30 minutes, 20 minutes on Wednesday and then start him against Chelsea on Sunday. That might be better for his legs because they're obviously going to be a bit more high intense games for him as well. So that might play a part for Tanaka as well, was my other thinking.
No, I totally agree with that. And Tanaka is slowly getting more minutes in his legs. He came off a bit later in this Wolves game. I think he came off in like 78, 79 minutes, something like that.
Like Tanaka got tired last season in the Championship, and Farker mentioned it. He's going to be tired now that he's not played for ages, and then he's played 2 games, high intensity, played well in both of them.
I would be okay with Gruev starting in this one. That would be okay.
There you go. The all stats out we admin bias against Gruev has ended with Hosty and Martin.
It's just more that I want to protect my lovely Tanaka, and I don't want to risk him playing too many minutes.
There is that. So which of our players are going to cause Bournemouth the most problems, do you think?
I do think that we can cause some problems down our left side. I'm looking at Okafor against Jimenez. That's I think if we can get Jimenez isolated. I don't know too much about what his 1v1 defending is like, but I back Okafor to do very well against most fullbacks 1v1 in this league. He just has that combination of unpredictability and pace, which fullbacks hate. So I think that will be the matchup for me, as well as Goodmanson on the overlap to get balls into the box. That's going to be a source of great joy for us. But for me, the biggest threat to them is probably Calvert-Lewin, because we've mentioned that they're not a very tall side, and Calvert-Lewin is very good aerially, as we're very well aware, and he should be able to do quite well against Bournemouth centre-backs. I don't think either of them are all that tall, maybe around 6 foot, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was one of the things with Hill when we were signing him, because we just kind of assumed he'd actually be a right back for us as a backup, was when there were talks of signing who could play centre-back or right centre-back in a 3 if we needed him to.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Calvert-Lewin should have the beating of most of their players aerially. So he'll be a big outball to us, because we shouldn't be engaging in the press too much in this one. When we have a weapon like Calvert-Lewin up front, we should be making use of that. I'm not saying yeet it to him every single time. I'm just saying yeet it to him a little bit more than what we normally would. When we are struggling under their intense press, just get it up there and it's fine.
Yeah. And the other thing is that with regards to that, you kind of mentioned we'll probably get onto it, but there's a question of how hard should we counter press in this game, because that's what Bournemouth kind of want as well.
There is that.
But Yeah, so definitely just kind of go along and try and hope that it sticks rather than anything else. Going a bit more direct. I think, not per se players, but I think that from the opposite side of things, if Truefair can get caught out quite high, then Justin and Bogle can have quite a bit of success in Aronson in that
Yes.
three. Them three have a really good understanding of, when to move inside, when to move forward at the moment, the overlaps and the underlaps. So there was a moment against Wolves, for example, which, Bogle was kind of more of an inverted fullback playing in that kind of central midfield space, a bit higher up, and Justin had obviously become the right back, which becomes a natural position for him anyway, with the way that it's split, and Goodmanson stayed at the left back, and then Aronson was kind of just, right, where's their space that I can find to then create a triangle for us all. And I think that could become beneficial within this game, just because of how Bournemouth like to play. We've kind of mentioned the next question with regards to who might drop out for certain reasons. But are there any, except Biol and Tanaka maybe, who we think may struggle in this game?
It's a tough one, is this? Because I think it's more of an overall thing here,
Yeah.
rather than it being one individual. And it depends on how we approach the game. If we look to approach the game where we are looking to keep hold of the ball, then the whole back line will struggle because they'll be under a lot of pressure. So potentially Darlow could struggle in this one if he's getting targeted by a press, or it could be Strauch who gets targeted for a press and he could struggle. It all depends on where their pressing triggers are looking to, who they focus on. I'm not sure who they would deem as the weak link in build-up. Potentially Gabby Goodmanson. I know he has had some moments where he kind of does that thing with his body when he's receiving the ball, when he's under pressure, and he's kind of like lets it run over him and then quickly darts forward after it, which can be a good thing, but it's high risk. So they could see that as a pressing trigger to look to focus on him and try to win down that right flank and get balls quickly into the box. But it will absolutely be more of a system-wide thing as to why we could struggle. So maybe the person who may struggle with this one will be Daniel Farker if he doesn't get the right setup in this one. But there isn't any one individual who will look at and say, you're a liability in this one. It's more of a system-wide thing for me.
Yeah, I think, again, it kind of goes with the system, and I brought him up then as having a good kind of idea of things. But I think Aronson could look poor in this game. He could look like he misses. He's either going to look really good or it's going to look really bad for him, I think, in this game.
He'll be matched up intensity-wise.
Yeah, and that's kind of where he can fall down, especially when it comes to the off-ball stuff, because that's what Bournemouth want. So if he doesn't get that right, it's going to look poor. Just on the Goodmanson stuff, I think if you're a team and you decide to press Goodmanson, you run a real risk of him beating you on the dribble.
It's a high-risk approach,
yeah. So I wouldn't target Goodmanson. I'd target to get down the outside and force him inside with a pass, but I wouldn't want to try and press him to give him the option to dribble out. But Bournemouth, if you want to press him and give him the option to dribble out, go for it. Fine by me. So we've discussed quite a bit there on our tactics on where we could fall down. Do we think Farker is going to change anything for this one, either in or out of possession?
I do hope there is some tweaks. I do. I think we shouldn't be as aggressive in the press in this one.
I'd like to see us in a mid-block.
Yeah, I want us to be more disciplined in when we choose to press. I don't think we should totally not press high. There will be moments where we can press them, but we should be picking and choosing our moments more, and which also that helps to conserve energy, right? Because we've got another game at the weekend, so it'd be a good thing to not be too knackered after a game against Bournemouth, because they do have a way of knackering teams out because of the way their games end up going end to end. So if we add even more onto that, we could end up with some injured players in this one. So it works for two ways for both. What I think will work best, because Bournemouth do struggle when sides are compact and don't allow openings. And the other part of it is we shouldn't be looking to play through their press too much. That is, I hope Farker's learned his lesson on that one after the Brighton game and the reverse fixture Bournemouth game, because I believe in both those games he did try to play around it, which wasn't the best of choices So I'm hoping he's learned his lesson on there, and that is what we see. Will he do that? That's where I'm not sure, and we'll have to see.
Yeah, that's where I think Gruev comes in, because I think Gruev will be the kind of keep ball and try and play around them, and that's why I think he's potentially going to try and go for that. I think that'll tell us when we see the lineups what he's thinking of doing, in my opinion. So we've kind of answered this quite a few times, actually, on what this game of football is going to look like. But Martin, do you want to just give it one last pop of what will this game look like and where will it be won or lost? Which I think we actually have touched both of those over the past.
Yeah, we've touched on both of these in passing, but just to give the final definitive response, I'd imagine it's going to be quite chaotic, and there's going to be a lot of transitions for both sides. I think we may end up having a bit more of the possession, and Bournemouth will probably be happy enough to do that. And I think the game will be won or lost as to who takes advantage of that chaos more. So we haven't looked great in all of our transition moments recently. So I'm hoping what little training we have between the last game and this game is spent on transition defending and transition attacking. So those are the only two things you need to worry about, really, in Areola game. If you can get the better of those chaotic moments, you'll come out on top. And I do think that we probably have a similar level of individual talent in both of the attacking lineups that we've got. I wouldn't take Evan Nielsen over Calvert-Lewin, mind you. But they do have also a lot of talented players, similar level to us, I think I'd say overall, but with more intensity than what we've got overall, I'd say. But it still will be a tight game, I think. I can't see one team scoring 3 and the other team scoring none or something like that. I think that there'll be a lot of chances for both sides to try to end this game.
Yeah, I think it's going to look similar to what you just said there, end to end, and probably won or lost down the wings. The fullbacks probably are going to be the differences. You know, Jimenez also likes to be a player who gets forward quite a bit.
He does.
For Bournemouth. Just that Truefair is doing it really well at the moment. So yeah, I think whoever comes out in those transition moments, I will say, obviously the goal against Wolves for Okafor was a transition moment, and that was executed really well. And there was a couple of other moments, again, Nonto's for the penalty win. That was also a transitional moment of correct decision. I know that I, in the Discord, kind of questioned, I kind of came back with a little bit of a argument against of saying, well, if a player's making the wrong decision 99% of the time, that's probably that we're not coaching it. And that's how it felt against Man United in that game, to be honest.
It is. In second half especially, I think.
Yeah. But that's also partly because of the game management and we let the game go. We've gone over that. But yeah. So we did look like a little bit better against Wolves in that sense. So yeah, it's to be seen whether... But we know that Farke doesn't like transition moments, and he's said in the past when we had Rutter and Somerville that, like, you know, these guys are good enough to not have to tell them what to do. Whether he still believes that with these players, I'm not sure, and I'm not sure these players have that as much skill above the level of what we're playing. So it's kind of like you need to tell them what to do.
Yeah, yes,
but yeah. But yeah, long story short, I think it's going to be won on the fullbacks and the wingers, and whoever gets the best of those moments from those players. Is there anything else, Martin, that you want to add?
I don't think so. I'm all good.
Okay then, well, all that's left for me to say is don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, and if you want to, of course, at patreon.com/ASAW Patreon, where you get some bonus pods, some articles, and you get the pods early in some cases when we can. We also donate to Leeds North and West foodbank.org.uk. So that's where some of the money goes to for those subscriptions and patrons. So all that is left for me to say is thank you, Martin.
Thank you as well, mate.
And thank you, listeners and watchers. It's been lovely to be back with Martin, and hopefully I'll be able to come back again sooner rather than later and long, like it has been for the past 3 months or whatever it was that I had a break. But we'll be back to review the Bournemouth game. Are we going to do more of a preview for Chelsea?
There might be a little bit of a preview.
I think we're going to have to. It is the semi-final now, so
yeah, I think we may have to. That does mean 3 double headers in a row, which is really taking its toll on me. But yeah,
but maybe you don't have to do it, Martin. Maybe we can get someone else. Maybe there's 2 people available that we can do it.
We'll see.
Yeah, right. So all that is left for me to say is, tschüss, Martin, and bis später, dear listeners.